Well, hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Weekend. We are back for week 2 of the worship podcast that no one asked for. But that everyone loves.
They want it.
Thanks for all the emails.
We're just trying to give them what they really want.
All those emails
coming in.
Hundreds of tens of emails.
Exactly. So
Count them all.
yes. My name is Matt Nissen. I am joined again today by Chad Leonard.
Hey.
And Becca Pickrell.
What's up?
Thanks for being, an even quieter greeting this time. Bringing the energy
What's
once
up?
again. Oh my gosh.
Don't want to scream at you.
I should clarify, we did this last week, and I should clarify that this is a few of our worship staff.
A portion
of our worship staff. We are also on our worship staff. We have the lovely and talented Jonathan Van Warren, who is our...
Is that really his middle name?
Middle name?
I don't think so.
He's also probably I'm not even a Jonathan. I'm just John.
Probably not, it's just John. He's our worship leader at our East Vancouver campus.
Yeah.
And we also have the young Isaiah Huntington III, who is our...
He's definitely not the third.
He's definitely not the third.
No.
With a last name like Huntington, I feel like it should be the third.
Else.
Sir Isaiah Huntington III.
Ooh, that's nice.
Isaiah is our student ministries worship leader, and they are also part of our worship staff as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
But so we do want to thank you guys for sending in some questions. We got some questions from y'all that we will follow up on this week. I should say that when we get emails to this podcast, there's something, I don't think this has been talked about on this podcast yet.
No.
But we occasionally get emails that are intended for another podcast.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if you all are aware of this, but there is another podcast called the New Heights Podcast, hosted by Travis and Jason Kelsey.
Very popular today.
It's very popular.
Oh,
I think it's the number one podcast.
It's the
Is
number
it
one.
really?
Yeah. Ever since Travis and Taylor Swift started hanging out.
Yes.
That podcast is very popular. And
Swift.
Paul, you can confirm this, but we get an email or two
Yeah, we have
that is
gotten
directed
emails.
to the Kelsey brothers.
That's not for us.
Are they just people asking for tickets to the movie? Free tickets
they
to
might be.
Taylor's movie?
They might
Please.
be.
No.
But I should clarify, we're not gonna answer any questions about Taylor Swift that come to the Kelsey Brothers podcast.
Or the Eagles. Or the Chiefs.
But it is a little bit confusing, because it's, we're clearly two of the top-rated New Heights podcasts.
Clearly.
Clearly.
And so I can understand how you would confuse them.
We've been here way longer,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
true.
saying.
That's true.
Do you think
Definitely
the Kelsey brothers got any worship-related questions?
They probably
I
did.
hope so.
That's so funny.
They're like, I don't know. Sounds a lot like sports.
What is this?
So thanks to all of you who are tuning in right now, expecting to hear the Kelsey Brothers,
Yeah.
and sending your questions to podcast@newheights.org.
Just us.
All right now.
Yeah, so we're not gonna answer any of those. I don't know. I really haven't listened to that podcast. You have, Chad? Have you listened to it a little bit?
I have listened to it.
You're a big fan of Travis Kelsey.
Jason's great.
Jason's great.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
I do not recommend listening to that podcast.
You don't recommend it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Language is not great.
How do you guys feel about Taylor Swift? You fans of Taylor Swift? Okay.
It's a complicated answer.
It's a complicated answer. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but we probably
We don't have time.
shouldn't get
Did you
into that.
start the timer? Because
I did start the timer.
For that. Maybe that should be our
We have 20 minutes. We can do 20 minutes on Taylor Swift.
All right, here's the deal.
Here's the thing. I will say, I'm basically a fan of Taylor Swift, but I completely understand why people would not be a fan of Taylor Swift. I'll just leave it at that. That's all I'll say.
There you go.
That's great.
A one-sentence take.
A one-sentence take. Okay.
man.
Well, we should move on. I have a couple questions for you guys that we'll start off with. These are not questions people asked. These are questions that I want to know.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
That I've never asked you guys. Okay, so the first one. These are worship related questions.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Let's start with this one. When you guys first started leading worship, what is one song that you remember playing A whole bunch. Like when you very first started leading. I want to get a little bit of a time frame for when you guys first started leading worship. What era of worship music is it?
Oh gosh.
Chad, what about you? Do you have any that come to mind that you played a bunch?
Definitely. Lord, I lift your name on high.
Okay.
Was
with hand motions?
Yeah.
I tried not to have anyone do hand motions, but people would do hand motions.
Well, you can't do hand motions when you play guitar.
So glad
Yeah.
you're in my
But I wouldn't.
That gives you a pass.
I'm not encouraging it, but people would do the hand motions. Yes. Lord, I lift your name on high was one that was on.
It's a
repeat.
good one.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you just remember when there was lots of clapping? Like was there hand motions and there was lots of
You
clapping?
mean clapping with the beat, or
Yeah.
like
with the beat? Yeah.
yeah, or this little like
No, not like woo, that was great. I love the
okay.
woo, that was great.
yes.
Just trying to clap
Yes,
with the
yes. And you would I remember my arm by the end of a set would be so red
Yeah.
from holding a mic and being like, they told me we were supposed to do this.
It's my favorite
you-
young drummer trial when the room at a student ministries event starts clapping, kind of like 4 on the floor, like claps, and then the drummer is like, they're really off. And what am I supposed to do? And that's the moment where you become a man as a drummer, I guess, or a woman, either way.
Firm.
I will say there is still. Does this happen still sometimes to you guys that somebody in the room tries to get a clap going? We don't do a lot of super upbeat
Yes,
music,
yes,
but
that's
whenever
not a
we have
trend
a
right
sort of
now.
upbeat
Yeah.
song, which
Yeah.
actually this weekend we have an upbeat song that I could see that happening. Someone will try to get.
I'll get it going.
Get a clap going.
I'll get it going in the back of the room.
Okay,
It's been
Great.
a long
Paul's
time.
in the sound booth
Yeah, it doesn't happen that much
Lord, I
anymore.
lift your name on high. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Becca, how about you?
I remember that one when I was in elementary school.
Oh, thank you.
When I was a wee
In
child.
elementary school.
I'm
How
pretty
old
sure
are you?
100. We covered that last week.
Okay, good.
New questions. Okay, I was thinking about "Blessed Be Your Name."
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Blessed be your name.
Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
lots
Yeah.
of right, lots of that.
Yeah.
And then oceans.
Speaking of Blessed Be Your Name, our Battleground tech person, Johnny, was just telling me this morning, he saw Matt Redman last week.
Did he
who wrote-
remix it?
Who wrote that song. And
You saw him in person?
yeah, I saw he was
Where
down in
was he?
he was down in California, and he heard him lead worship.
Oh.
But he was bringing it up because we talked about 10,000 Reasons last week,
Yes.
very briefly.
Yes.
And he said that he played 10,000 Reasons, of course, and the room went nuts.
Yeah.
I would.
Dude, that song's
That is-
especially with somebody
Yeah.
like that.
He did
singing
Heart
it,
of
yeah.
Worship into 10,000
Are you
Reasons.
serious? And
stop.
people were like,
That's so
yeah,
good.
game
It's so good.
over.
It's so good.
That's so good.
Blessed Be Your Name is a
Blessed
good
Be Your
song.
Name
though.
That is a
is
good one.
I like that song.
That's a solid. That's upbeat. That one requires the clapping.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it back.
One that I remember playing a bunch when I first started leading was probably I Could Sing of Your Love Forever.
Oh, yes.
I remember playing that one
Yep, that was
quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
I remember, you guys remember a song called Trading My Sorrows?
Oh.
Did anyone ever play that?
With the hand motions.
I
No
still
hand
think
motions.
that student ministries should every once in a while just start playing Trading My Sorrows because I think it would
a good song.
age perfectly.
Yeah, it's a good song.
Yeah.
It's kind of a student ministries oriented song. Very simple. You just sing Yes, Lord over and over.
Chords are easy for
Chords are easy.
everybody.
Yes. Okay. Follow-up question to this. What is your guys' favorite worship album? Like if you were to think about all the albums, what one comes to mind? What are you laughing at?
I was about to say, what's an album?
What's an album?
No, truly, really what I'm laughing at is that I don't listen to music unless I have to learn it, which is a really bad habit. Like, Ryan's always giving me a hard time because I'm like, okay, well, I don't know anything unless, or like if my kids hear it and they want to listen to it, it's bad. So actually having this job where you guys are like, any new songs? I'm like, I have to pay more. I have to spend more time with music. So I don't have because you're talking about one that we're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
I would pour through
Yeah.
the music. I don't have,
That you either like to listen to or that there was just a bunch of songs that you
Yeah.
played on there.
yeah.
Or that led.
I don't have a good answer for you. But when I was teaching, I used to put on Bethel Without Words or synesthesia in my classroom during tests. And my students really liked it. They were like, oh, it's really nice.
Love that
So
album.
yeah, that's a good one. I would say, and you can sing along with it because it's all of those, it's just the tracks to all those I don't even know what album is Synesthesia.
Did the students sing along with it while they took
Sometimes
their test?
they would like be humming along,
Just a
and
little humming.
yeah, a little humming. I'd have to be like, you need to be quiet.
Be quiet.
For your neighbor. Be quiet for your neighbor. They're trying to take a test.
Chad, how about you?
Yeah. Okay. So, the album that comes to mind is a David Crowder album. Yeah, remember him?
Yes.
And it was the first album that his band put out at their church. So it was University Baptist Church.
Yeah.
It was their album. And
I
at the
remember
time,
that.
we were doing songs like Lord, I Lift Your Name on High.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't my favorite, but it was that's what we were doing.
Available.
Yeah.
And so that album was like, for me, like, oh man, I like this music. And
Yeah.
it's good and it's
What
very
was on
influential.
there?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I can't really. I remember that when I was in college,
Yeah.
somebody gave me a burned CD.
Yeah.
Used to be able to burn CDs of UBC Waco. Like
Yep.
what they wrote on it just said UBC Waco,
Yeah.
but it was basically, I think it was that same album. I don't know. I can't remember what
Yeah,
was on
it
there
definitely was that
exactly.
one.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Really good.
I am a big fan of Hillsong United We Stand.
Dude, such a great album.
So many good songs on there.
Yes.
That we used to play a bunch. We used to do like student ministries worship back then, so we did songs like "The Time Has Come" and "Take It All." But it has like other ones like "From the Inside Out," "Came to My Rescue." There's like half of that. We easily played half of that album.
I think more than
like,
half, yeah.
More than half of the
More
album.
than half.
Yeah,
It's
that
really
is-
good.
Yeah,
Back
that
when
is-
guitars were king.
Exactly.
now it's
No keyboards.
seeing.
Yeah. So many good songs on that album. So if you want to listen to a good worship album, check out any of those. You probably can't find the one that Chad mentioned.
No, I don't think you can
I
anymore.
wonder-
I just
Yeah.
looked on Spotify. I could not find it.
We can burn you a cup.
We'll burn. There'll be copies burned
that
for
no one
you.
can listen to. Your car might have a CD player.
Yeah.
Look in there.
Possibly. Look in there.
Your parents' car might have.
Your parents' car. Paul, do you have one? Do you have a favorite worship album?
I really liked "We Will Not Be Shaken."
Oh,
That
yeah.
whole
That's
album.
That
that's
is a great album.
From a production standpoint, too, it
We
was
also
very,
played a lot of that album.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
did.
did. It was just different. Everything about
Yeah.
it. There was just strings, and there was two
Yeah.
drummers, and there was like it was just so
Yeah.
different from what I was used to. I love that album.
Yeah. It's a really good album. Okay, one more question, and then we'll get into some of these ones that people asked.
Okay.
What is your favorite worship song to lead right now? Mm-hmm. Which one is really hitting you hard?
Becca, go.
Becca.
We know you have like 10.
I actually, that's the problem.
I
Is
know.
I do.
Yeah, that's right. You have too many.
Because I just want to sing all the time. Like I really do. Like it's not even. Did you say lead or just sing or just play?
I think lead. Like
Okay.
that we do that
Yeah.
when we lead it, you're like, this song is
Because
great.
there's definitely songs like I love Gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
but I would much prefer like when you guys lead it or like somebody else, and I like to just sing harmonies on that because I love singing parts. So that's
You're grateful when we lead it.
yeah, I'm full of gratitude and sheer ability to lead the song. But like if I'm singing it, oh man, maybe like what's really fun, like All Hail King Jesus is really fun because
Yeah.
you can just kind of like go full, like you can go pretty hard in that, and our church is receptive to that song, and so it's like nice to like it's really fun to like worship with everybody when they're really there. Like I'd also really like Just As Good, which is a duet. So does that count?
Yeah. Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a duet. So that one's really good. And this might be like too much, but Hymn of Heaven, I always think about Paul's family when we're doing Hymn of Heaven, and I don't like that one's really like meaningful to me and just the season of like our lives as we were in when we introduced that. So
Yeah.
trying to lead that song with Emily and was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good one.
So it's like I think songs like that are like that's like a significant one for me.
Yeah. It was great. Chad, how about
Yeah,
you?
yeah. So the song that we did this past weekend, the new one, Hope
Yeah.
on the Horizon.
So good.
Yeah.
Man, it's such a great song, and it resonates with me. I just love it. And I love singing it. Like, it's just a good song
Yeah.
for me to
I
sing.
haven't gotten to lead that one quite yet. So.
No.
So I didn't get to choose that one. You said sing. But yeah, that song.
For me, I would probably. This is like a kind of an old song, but every time we play it, like Another in the Fire, I always love leading that song.
Yeah.
Chad does not like leading that
don't
song as much.
So we might have to tell this story.
That was last week. It was Worship Fails. Was
Tell
last
the
week.
story.
But it is so good. The message of it is so
It
good.
is. Short story. The first time that we were back together after COVID, as the whole entire church, we were doing Another in the Fire.
Yeah.
And the song starts, and our lyrics on the back wall for us go out. So I don't have any lyrics.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, we have lyrics on the back wall.
Yeah, we have a confidence monitor.
Confidence monitor.
Just gives us a little more confidence.
And when it goes out, I lose confidence.
I lost all confidence for the entire first verse.
Yeah.
Just a musical interlude, everyone just staring and me not knowing what the words are.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
But then you just were like, it's another in the fire.
Yeah, we got to that part. I remember
you knew
that
that part.
But it's quite
There's
a long.
a lot.
It's a slower song, so it's a long verse.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
instrumental. Anyway,
We got
Yeah.
there.
so
Yeah.
Whoops.
there you go.
It's a good song. Okay. So people did send us in some questions.
Great.
Some of these questions, we kind of got like different versions of them. So I did
Okay.
try to like kind of reword them a little bit. So if you
Cool.
don't hear your question exactly the same way, it's because I tried to combine it with somebody else's question, and hopefully we get to the gist of what you're
To the
you're
heart
asking.
of the worship.
Yes, to the heart of the worship. There it is. Okay, so we will answer some of those questions. We will not answer any questions directed to the Kelsey brothers. I really hope there is people listening right now and they've made it this far. And they're like,
Wait,
maybe they'll get to Taylor at some point.
You're not Jason Kelsey?
I could be Jason
You could.
Kelsey.
You kind of look like Jason Kelsey, honestly.
And they're like, I think that's him. I don't
could
know.
be.
He always has his helmet on. It's hard to say.
I had no idea
That might be what he looks like.
They were into worship music. I had no idea.
Exactly.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, so here's the first topic of discussion. The question is this: what does it mean to lead worship? How do you personally worship while making things accessible to the congregation? I think we should go to Chad on this one first.
Starting real light.
Yeah, real life.
Just real light.
What is it? I think this question. I do think this question has to do with like us.
Personally.
I think leading music. I think is what
Okay.
this question is asking, and then on stage, like how do we balance that, leading the room and personally worshiping, that kind of thing, or just leading a group of people? What does that look like?
Yeah. So what does it mean to lead worship? So I think for me, it's about creating a space and a place where people can encounter who God is and what he's done for them. So what I like to think of it is like, I just want to help paint a picture of who God is, what he's done, and how that interacts with your circumstance. So when you're coming in from a weekend and you're feeling just the weight of the world, that we can sing these songs together and we can declare his goodness, and you can juxtapose that, whatever the word is, to what's going on in your life. I don't know.
I think you nailed it.
I think that was the word.
Perfect. Yeah. So what's happening in your life, and you can have a reset to go like, okay, yeah, God is good, and what he has for me is good, and I'm encouraged by this moment. So for me, that's what I want to do, and I think that's what we want to do, is create a space and a place where people can connect with the God of the universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
The word
for you?
the word that comes to my mind is like facilitate. Like I sometimes think we are like so we'll have like rehearsal, then we have run through, then we have services. So it's like, in some point throughout all of that, like sometimes that's in rehearsal, like where that I am like my most, like having my most work with the Lord, that I'm like that's happening for me personally.
Right.
And then the other moments, I often feel like I'm facilitating a space for like with the gifts that the Lord has given me, with like that emptying out of myself, in order for other people to engage. Like I'm creating the space, the peaceful, the available space for somebody to come in who is having like having a good day, having a bad day, having whatever, like I'm creating the space for them to come in to encounter God's presence. And I think even our responsibility as like the leader, whatever, if for being the one that's in charge, we even get to do that with our team that's on stage with us, like by our preparedness and by the things that we give them throughout the week for rehearsal and that kind of stuff, that allows them to then come into that time and be more prepared to then lead like the greater church. And I it's like that word just keeps coming back to me, like facilitating this space, so that other people can come and not be distracted by something that's happening and can be able to engage.
Yeah. I like that word facilitate. We talked about this a little bit last week, I think, in the Bible where it talks about the Levites being worship leaders.
Yeah.
And there's there's the example in Scripture where King David tells the Levites to go in front of the ark, to lead the ark, and to lead people in songs, like lead people in praise. Like that's one part of it. But there's another part of it too where it is the facilitating. It is the setting up of worship spaces. It's the maintaining of that kind of stuff too. And so I do think it's what you guys are talking about. It's just creating those spaces and then leading people. Because I think sometimes it's hard for us to emotionally even know how to approach God, and so we like to we try to set up spaces and places for that to happen, for us to understand what's going on in our hearts and respond to what God is doing in our lives, and even just create a moment for that for God to speak to our hearts too. And so I like that picture in the Bible of that. Like there is the music piece of it, but then there is the facilitating part of it too, which is cool.
Do we answer all of that question?
I think we did. Well, actually, the second part. How do you personally worship while making things accessible to the congregation? Did we answer that?
Not really. Yeah.
Let's do that.
I think this is really, really important because what we do corporately, it's that has to be accessible. So the truth is that there are things and ways in which I worship personally that I don't bring to our weekend gatherings, because whether they're songs that are meaningful to me or things that I do that are meaningful to me, but wouldn't be meaningful to a corporate gathering because they're not accessible. I love this song, it's just not singable.
Yeah.
So I can worship with that as I play guitar at my house, but I wouldn't bring that to the church because no one could connect with it in the same way, or very few people would. And so I think that's the part that we get to do, is bring things that we hope and pray, and it's very subjective, but we hope and pray that when we bring them, that people can on a large scale connect with them, and they're singable and they're relatable and they're edifying to the whole gathering.
Yeah, I think the other side of that too is our personal worship in that is important too, because I do think we can't lead people to a place where we aren't going ourselves to some extent. And so I do think it has to be accessible to the congregation, but we personally, our personal worship is such a big part of that being accessible to the congregation. How, if we're not doing that on our own, on stage and really participating and believing the words we're singing, and then that translates to the room as well, which is why I was just talking to Isaiah yesterday, our student ministries worship leader, just about some students even, and I love that when some of our students who lead, when I see them leading on stage, or I see them in the room, it's the same thing. They are worshiping in the room in the same way that they would on stage, and that is such a huge deal to me in terms of of leading people in worship. Not just when you're on stage singing a song, that when you're in the room you're participating just as fully in worship, I think is a really great thing too. Yep. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, when we sing a new song, should I just jump in and participate, or just reflect on the words to determine if a song is true? Okay. I'll start us off.
Yeah, you start.
Yeah, you got it.
I would say, as worship leaders, we would love it if you would jump in and participate.
Yes, when you
Love
feel ready, as
When
far
you-
as like
yeah.
you picked up the chorus.
Yeah,
or-
obviously there's an element of learning a new song and but that again, that's part of why we choose songs that are not going to take 2 months for you to figure it out
Yeah,
how it goes.
singable.
We want to have stuff that's singable that you can jump in and sing. Now, whether or not a song is true, like I do think we're not asking you to like turn your brain off and not determine if something is true. But there is a piece of like, we as worship leaders do think through that. We talked about this a little bit last week.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time thinking about whether or not a song is true and whether or not our church should be singing this song, whether it's something we want to emphasize in worship. So there is like an element of trust there, I think, in that what we are singing is true. What do you guys think? Any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, like we don't want people to just turn their brains off and not evaluate, what they're singing.
Yeah.
Of course, we want you to like engage with it in that way. And I also think that if there's something that comes up where you're like, what? Like,
Ask.
please know we are accessible.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
we would
that's-
love to
yeah.
engage in that conversation. One,
Yeah.
because there's a guarantee we've thought about it.
Yeah.
and we love having these conversations. And yeah, so just come ask. But also I love what you're saying in the sense that like there should be a level of trust in it that hopefully you believe that we've done our due diligence
Yeah.
and that you can just enter in and sing it. And everyone has different capacities, right? Some people pick up melodies really quickly. And some people, it takes them a little bit longer. And some people like to kind of sit and
Right.
and take in
Contemplate.
the song and kind of listen to it first before they enter into it. And that's totally fine too. But I don't, yeah. I think
And,
that's
well,
what-
yeah, and I think like just piggybacking on that, like if you are feeling like, man, I want to sit and absorb this and decide how I feel about it, I think that reflection process is still like worshiping. You're still engaging what's happening in the room, even if you're just like looking at the screen and going, okay, like what is that portion of the song saying? Where is that found in scripture? Or what is that trying to tell me? Or how is that trying to lead my heart closer to the Lord? And yes, trusting that we've thought it through, and we would love to talk about it with you if you have questions.
Yeah, we definitely would. I mean, there's definitely people who sometimes will come up to us after a service and ask a question about a song. Or,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, you could send us an email. We'd be more than happy to answer.
Yeah.
A lot of times, some of these questions, I think, fall into this area of what I would call poetic language in songs. And I think that's sometimes what can trip people up. If there is a word picture or something like that sometimes like, what does that mean exactly? And so I do think that's one question we get sometimes where people are like, I don't totally understand what this means. And like we'd definitely be happy to. And it's something that like we do talk about in our services sometimes. So we don't stop and explain
Every single time we
song
sing
every
Ebenezer.
time. But yeah, in a song like, I mean, you mentioned just as good.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
a song
it has
like
that
just
word
as
in
good.
it, Ebenezer.
Yeah, it says, it has the Ebenezer.
And I feel like the first like one or two times that we did it, we talked about it, or maybe like the first time we did, and then maybe the third or fourth time we did. But yeah, we're not going to stop and necessarily speak about it every single time. But
Yeah, but there is things like that, and so we're always happy to answer questions like that. But we do spend a lot of time thinking about whether songs are true. So, when we introduce a song, it is because that we think this is what our church should be singing, and sometimes we get that 100% right, and sometimes not. But we're human after all. Okay, you guys ready for another question? How you doing?
Great.
Need to hydrate?
no, I'm okay.
Okay.
I took my inhaler before we got in here
Oh, good.
today.
I'm glad.
So I'm fully ready.
We wouldn't want you to start wheezing halfway through. These mics are pretty powerful. They're
I
gonna
know.
they're gonna pick that up. Okay, let's see where we at here. Okay, here's the next question. How do you choose which production elements to implement and why? Examples would be like lights, fog, volume of sound, those kind of things. What goes into those decisions? Becca.
Me. First.
Paul.
Paul. Yeah, you get to. This is a great one for you.
Well, the question is, why do we do what we do, production wise?
Yeah.
Well, why do we choose?
Yeah, why do we choose what to do production wise? What goes into those decisions?
I don't know if I can fully answer this question, but I think a common misconception is I think a lot of times when people are kind of anti certain pieces of production, whether it's haze or it's lights that move or the volume or whatever, a lot of times people feel like they're being manipulated. Like you guys are trying to pull like my heartstrings by doing this, and you're like trying to take me on this journey. And I think a lot of times like that is the common misconception, where it's actually coming from like this stem of creativity in our department and with our people. Like we're excited about these elements and we're trying to build this space that we're like, it's coming out of our creativity and out of our excitement, not out of like, oh, I bet you guys will love this if we did this, you know? And I think that's kind of the, mostly among like younger people, like that have this, I don't know, like they want things that are authentic, and it is authentic, you know? Like just because there's haze or a light that moves doesn't mean that like we just copy and pasted it every week and we're like, here, do it again, you know? Like, so that I think is not really answering the question, but is like something that I think helps a lot of people, that it's like, I'm excited about these elements that we're putting in there, and we're doing it in another form of worship in the preparation for the services.
Also, the haze has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just like, oh, that looks cool. It helps the lights and the cameras, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does look cool, but in the lights and
Yes,
the
but
cameras.
yes,
Yeah.
but like, it's not just like, look at this cool smoke machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I sometimes think if we don't know, like, I don't know, if we don't know what is happening, then, or like why, the why seems harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, all of these decisions in terms of production stuff, there's a huge breadth of these in churches. Like there are some churches that have very little production at all, and there are some churches that have a lot of production. And I think with all of those decisions as to how much to use lights, how much to use sound, how loud it should be, all those things, like we have a lot of conversations about those and what will help us get to where we want to be. And I would say in general, New Heights is in the middle of that somewhere.
Yep.
We are definitely not a church that's going to be the flashiest thing that you go into.
Yeah.
You know, that spends millions of dollars on production kind of things. That's not who we are. But we also do want to create a space where people can come in and be able to engage and have a place that they want to come. They want to invite their friends to. And that appeals to as like broad of an age range as possible.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think for me, it goes back to what I was saying even about music and this corporate expression of music that we're doing, we're worshiping together. In the same way we're trying to create a space with those songs and with those moments, we're also trying to create a space with the environment and what things look like and how it sounds. And you know, we do have conversations about this a lot, and we also realize that a lot of this is very subjective. Because some people would be like to what you're saying, Matt. Some people would call us like way overproduced, and some people would call us way underproduced. Yeah, we're trying to find a middle ground with who we are as a body of believers, where we are in the country, and who we are as our personalities and our buildings. All of those things, like we really take into account. And so I think if you go to some of our buildings, there's more production elements than others, just because of the way that building is and how it's built and how it's, you know, the environment that's there. And so, but we do talk about it a lot, and we do wrestle with these things, and this is kind of where we landed. So we have really And I don't even think we've like, sometimes we're still in discussions about it, you know? So this is where we landed for now.
Yep.
For now. Yeah, that's good.
What do you think?
Well, my first thought when you said that was just thinking about our buildings are all slightly like different, and so they require slightly different things. But it's like trying to take this, and we all have slightly different preferences even within our team.
Yeah.
And so it's like that, trying to be like all one the same is a challenge. And I think you have people who, like myself included, like I'm super sound sensitive, so I wasn't on stage at New Heights West this weekend. I was in the back, and I was like, okay, like there's moments in this where I'm like, this is like louder than I would prefer. And I'm like looking around and I'm like, but everybody else seems okay. And then like my husband would be like, it's not loud enough. Like people have different preferences. And so it's trying to strike a balance between that, but then also like what we're trying to do on stage. The style of music that we're doing requires a certain decibel level, like in order for things to be communicated. So there actually is like a science behind the way that sound is created. And like you can't, like drums can't be this certain thing played at this certain intensity level at, 50 dB. They're going to be at a certain spot, and we're going to put the drum cage around it. We're going to mic them so we can get good sound. It's all thought through. So,
Yeah, I mean, Chad, you're correct in that like as many people as you would talk to is as many opinions you would get on any of
Yeah.
these things. Like even among us.
even on our stuff,
Like
yeah.
it is. I do think a couple of guiding pieces that we have would be like, we don't ever want. Well, we try as hard as we can to not have production elements be a distraction to what we're doing. We want anything that we do to like enhance what we are doing, and not like let's take lighting for example. We don't necessarily want our lighting to be as dramatic as possible. So that's the thing. So instead of singing the songs, you're like, oh wow, look at those lights moving around. That's not our goal for sure. We want it to just enhance the things that we're doing. I think the second thing would be, we do always want to keep in mind that we want our church to continue to reach younger people.
Yeah.
So a lot of those decisions are partially that. Because if we keep doing this, and that's why we say for now this is what we're doing, because that's constantly changing, because we're constantly evaluating what that is and wanting it to appeal to as broad as possible. But we don't ever want the section of people we miss to be the next generation of our church, because our church is always, the church is, I don't know if this is the church is always like one generation away from being extinct, essentially. And so that is something that we value. And one of the things and we'll probably talk about this a little bit with some of these next questions, but I do love the fact that the older generation of our church really gets that and really like values that and says, and a lot of times I'm going to put my personal preference aside, because I love the fact that my kids and grandkids want to be here, and I think that's a super important thing that definitely goes into those production decisions a bit. Anything to add on that?
I was going to say, I think whether you want more or whether you want less production, like usually somebody has their end goal in mind as like, this is what it should be.
Yeah.
But unless you are like, it should only be acoustic instruments and voices, or you think you should be on the cutting edge of technology, like why are you just one step more produced or less produced than we are? As far as what you think is the ideal thing. Like usually it's like, well, we shouldn't do that. But then you're like, well, but you're okay with all these other things. Like why would we stop there on the scale of, how produced it is or not? Yeah. Usually people are like, this is the perfect way to do it. I wouldn't do those lights, but what I would do is this.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, why are you landing there as the perfect spot for worship to be? So just something to think about if you're like, that's not what I would do. It's like, well, what would you do? And it's probably not on either end of the spectrum of the most or the least produced thing that you can have. It's all preference.
Yeah. And I would definitely, we definitely don't think that we are the place that is getting this right and everyone else is not. Like, there's so much context
We're
in
doing
everything.
our best.
So,
Giving it a try.
really, we're not saying any of those things are wrong. It's just where we have landed is where we are.
Yep.
And you can come on a weekend and see what that is. Okay, so this next question kind of goes into that preference aspect a little bit too. So the question is, what do I do with a song that I don't like? And then the follow-up is, how do my personal musical preferences affect my worship? Kind of two things there, but how would you guys respond to that? Let's do the song. What do I do with a song I don't like?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things. It's just true that we all have our preferences. Like, I think even among us, there are songs that we have in our library that some of us prefer more than others. And I think we have to make a choice to say, okay, this doesn't fully connect with me in like every possible way, that I'm not like just gelling with it. But is God worthy of my worship? Yeah, he totally is. And so for this moment, I can sit down, I can put aside my critical thinking and my preferences to say, well, I'm just going to enter in. I'm just going to choose to enter in and sing this song, and hopefully God will meet me in it. If you can't, then don't sing it and pray. You know what I mean? Like,
say pray. Yeah.
If you really, if you really are like this,
Yeah.
I just hate it so much that I just whatever. Like, then I guess you could stop singing it and whatever. But there's part of it.
And we don't sing songs forever, so just give it a year or two.
Sometimes
It'll
us.
pass. It'll pass.
Oh, man.
Unless it's one that everyone else loves.
Right.
And then maybe it's you.
And then
And it'll be around for a while.
Oh my gosh. But I do think like what you're saying with like just pray, that's like we're facilitating this space for you to encounter the Lord in this like this way that we do it on the weekends, which is singing worship songs. But there's so much more that you could be doing during that time, like that is also being respectful of that space and is also encountering the Lord, like praying, like reading a psalm, like, just I sometimes like what is special is just like listening to everybody singing around you, being like, wow, like there's power in this. This is meaningful. So there's still space, even if it's not a song that you prefer, to have a worshipful encounter. Let the songs be sung, let the words be sung over you,
Yeah. I think none of us really have control over what our like personal preferences are.
Right.
But we do have control over how much we
Yeah.
let those personal preferences dictate our participation and attitude.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of scenarios. I'll speak for myself. If I let my own, we all have our own selfish desires, our own sinful nature we always have to keep that at bay to some extent. And I think that can even creep into to our worship a little bit too. We can be like, I'm going to give credence to every thought I have as to what song I don't like or what I don't like in this church service, and I'm going to let it affect my ability to like truly worship and participate and receive all of those things. And I think I think that's just a heart. I think there's a heart check aspect to that too, that it's fine to have personal preference, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to just examine your heart on that and how much you're letting your own selfish desires get in the way of that. Because I think we all want our own way. And not that those are not that that's good or bad, but that's something I think being a part of a church, being a part of a group of people, we just have to be mindful of that we are here to worship together. We're here to be the church together. And so much of that, this doesn't just apply to worship or music. There's like so many aspects of when you're trying to be a group as a whole,
Right.
you have to put aside some of those preferences sometimes
Yep.
to really fully participate in that. And so I don't know. I think that's something to keep in
Yeah,
mind.
there's
too.
like nothing more that the enemy wants than to create division
Yeah.
within his body.
yeah,
And so
and sometimes that can be really
Yeah.
subtle.
And so it's like even something as much as that, like maybe it's just you and you're like, he's trying to draw you out of this opportunity that you have in this worship service by
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's like instead of that heart check can just be like, okay, I still really don't prefer this song, but what can I still be doing during that time? I could
Yeah.
be praying, I could be listening to those around me, I could be reading the words, I could be, whatever,
Yeah.
focusing on scripture, memorizing something else that is still pointing your heart back to the Lord as
Yeah.
opposed to just that
Yeah.
that grumbling.
Yeah, because it's one thing to be like, this song isn't my favorite song.
Right.
It's another thing to go to all my friends and be like, man, this new song is really terrible.
Email the new podcast at newheights.org. Yeah.
You guys don't like the song either, right? So
They're all like, what?
yeah,
What are you talking about?
yeah. So if you have songs you really hate, let us know.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, I'm gonna give. So this is a follow up question to this whole preference thing. Should I ever let my worship preference drive me to choose what church to attend? This is kind of like the bigger aspect of that.
Right.
How does that affect? Because churches there's a
Yeah.
lot of different
There's
churches,
different styles
different
and-
styles. Does my personal preference should have something to do with where I go to church?
Man, this is so nuanced.
It's very nuanced.
It's so nuanced.
Yes.
Because on the surface of it, I would say no. Like, stick where you're at, and
Yeah.
and
Counterpoint. Yes.
Yeah. But seriously though,
but I think
like, yeah.
because, and we'll get into the nuance
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this.
Let's
right?
get into
yeah.
the nuance. Yeah.
The if you're just coming with a heart of like every time you're coming in with a heart of evaluation, like you're just evaluating everything. You're like, I don't know, do I like that? Do I like that?
Yeah.
Are they
Yeah,
doing
that's
this?
good.
Or is this happening?
Yeah, it's so
I don't like
critical.
haze. I don't.
Yeah.
And you're not coming in expectant to engage with the God of creation,
Yeah.
and come and command your soul to worship. If you're just coming in with already automatically sort of an attitude about like, well, is this going to be meaningful to me or helpful to me or whatever? I think in some of those circumstances, it can be a heart check or a heart attitude thing that you come in and say, you know what, I'm just going to enter in, and that's okay. There might be something that you are at a spot where just musical style or the way it's happening, or it's just too loud. Like there are like personal preferences and things that are and if there is another place that you go that you're like, this actually sort of is a better fit for me, and you weren't completely tied into this church, and you find this other church that feels a lot more comfortable, maybe hits more of like your heart language, and it's good. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
Like there are great churches out there.
Yeah.
And if you find one that fits more in your personality, but not because you just hate everything about what's happening here and you're mad and you go over here, but just like you find a place that like seems to be like where God wants you and where God has you. Like that's okay. We're not trying to keep anyone here. There are tons of great churches, and we celebrate those churches.
Right.
So that's some of the nuance. Like check your heart. Also, it's okay. Like if you find
Yeah.
a place that fits you, and then I think that there is a cultural and age kind of thing that happens where, as churches are trying to keep reaching the next generation, we are going to keep doing songs and musical styles that may not fully gel with you if you're getting older. And so I suppose you could go to a church that does a more traditional style of music, and that might be something you could do. But I would encourage you to kind of view yourself as a missionary, honestly. To say, yeah, this culture, this music style, it's not exactly what my heart longs for, but I know that it's reaching another generation, and I know that God is working here. And so I am going to be like a missionary, and I'm just going to come in and love on these younger people and do my best to engage with it. And I know that's happening here because I have conversations with people that are like, this isn't my favorite style of music, or I wish we did some other songs, but like I see God moving, I see God working, and I'm just excited about it, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. And I love that. I love seeing that heart. And I also fully understand the pain of that. Because we are going to get there too.
Nonsense.
Never.
But honestly, I'm
Becca's already
excited.
100.
I am excited
already
for
100.
a moment that I go, I don't know these songs.
Yeah.
And I don't love them.
Yeah.
But God's working, and I get to just celebrate that.
Yeah, you
and,
get to facilitate
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah. I mean, you kind of covered both sides of that.
I know he did. He did.
You answered it and then counterpointed it
I
yourself
loved it.
and answered your own question.
That's great.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with a lot of that. I think if you're here and the worship style is giving you constant angst and you go somewhere else and it feels like a breath of fresh air and you feel like you can grow in your faith and live out what God has called you to do, then absolutely. Yeah. But I do think there's so many other reasons to be at a church besides musical style too. That's the other thing I would say is that like, yeah, that is part of it, but so much of it is like the theology of the church, the relationships you have in the church. So I guess I would think pretty long and hard about changing a church primarily based on musical style. Like, because just there's just so many, which you touched on some of those aspects as well of whether you buy into what the church is doing as a whole. And so I think our worship and music is just a small part of what New Heights is about. And so, yeah, but there definitely for some people could be the decision that our style of music or this place isn't for them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other good places.
Like what you said, it's like we celebrate the other churches that are around us, and there's a lot of great ministry that's happening outside of here.
Yep.
And it's like the community is the church, not just us as church. So.
Yeah. Okay, one more question is kind of on this vein. It's less about preference, but the question is, what do I do when I'm not in a worship mindset? And I think that sort of means like I guess I show up to worship, but I've had a terrible day, and I really am not in the mood for all these songs that you're singing at me right now. And I just want to be grumpy.
And we're all like, same. I mean, I think that's the like veil, right? Is like we have those like we're people, and we have those moments too. And part of why I think the three of us, and I think a greater church is, and we've talked about it when we've done this on gratitude, is like that commanding of your soul to remember. Like that's what the Psalms are, right? Like David is like all torn up about something, and then he's like, but look at the stars and look at creation, and like he's like that lament process, and it's like, but God, you are still good. And there is this practice of setting aside our like earthly pains or our things that are holding us from him and being with the Lord. And it's like that practice is good, and that doing of that is good. And we used to say a lot, you are what you repeatedly do. So when you repeatedly worship, when you like learn that, when you take command of your soul that way, like he's very ready for you to do it. And so that would be my encouragement would be, and that happens with us. There's times where I'll walk in and I'm like, all right, let's do this Thursday night thing. And you're just, I'm coming from another meeting or a distraction or getting a call or whatever. And we got to get up there in rehearsal and just like work through it. And there's moments where I will look at Chad and be like, okay, that helped. And I'm like, I'm ready to. You can get it off of you by singing. At least for me, and I think for most of us, like there are that practice of being there and showing up, because he's ready for you, and he's expecting you, so you should be expecting him.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think there's an aspect of when we're not in the mindset to worship, sometimes singing these songs together or being in a room where other people are singing songs has a way of uplifting your spirit, reminding yourself about the truth of who God is. And maybe you need to hear some of those things more than others at certain times. But I can think of lots of times when I didn't feel like it going into something.
I don't feel like it.
and then I think God meets you in those places.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's in those moments. I think you guys probably would agree with this. Sometimes it's in those moments where like, man, this is just not great right now, and then it turns into one of the best ones.
Yeah.
So there's an aspect of God uses what we bring to Him, and He works in our weakness and in our brokenness. And I think like when we choose to worship in spite of not feeling like it, He can use that and make a beautiful thing out of it.
Yeah, I think we talked about it before. We did talk about we are trying to connect our emotion to this experience, and we are trying to connect that to truth. But the emotion is not the truth. The truth is the truth. So therefore, like, I've learned over and over again that I cannot trust my emotions or how I feel because they will lead me astray. Because we're human, and we come into situations with emotional things happening to us, and if we let that guide us, if we just think like I'm having a bad day, so I can't worship. Like, no, you're having a bad day. God's still worthy of your worship, no matter the circumstance, the emotion, or what's happening. And so you get in that moment to say, "Yep, I'm going to command my soul." So if you've been around me long enough, you've heard me talk about Psalm 42. And this, the last refrain in this says, "Why, O my soul, are you downcast? Why are you so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise Him, my Savior and my God." I mean, this is just summing up what David's attitude is, which is like, I've got this thing, I've got this emotion, I've got whatever I'm feeling, and I'm not going to let that guide me. I'm going to let the fact that God is worthy of my worship, yet I will praise you. And I think we have to go into every situation with that mindset. And exactly what you're saying, Matt, this has been revealed to me over the 20 some years that I've been leading, which is there are many times when we get done and we've done a worship service, and I get done and I feel great about it. I feel like that was amazing. Felt like people were engaged in it, and I was having a really emotional experience, and I connected with God. And I get done, and you're kind of like, all right, everyone, like, you don't need affirmation, but sometimes as humans you want it, right? And you're like, no one is saying that was great, or like, we did a good job, or just me, huh? Okay. All right. And then there are other moments where I'm leading through, I just don't want to, I don't want to sing. I don't want to do it. I'm tired. I want to be done.
Don't make me sing.
Yeah, don't make me sing. For whatever reason, anything, it's just not a good day.
Yeah.
And I got to get up there and lead a song, and I'm tired, and I just want to be done. And I'm in the moment working it out with God, like just singing, and the songs are coming out, and I'm having this other dialogue with God. I'm just praying and like, I don't know. I have doubts right now. I have these things going on, and I get done and just think, that was the worst. Like, that was not, how was that redeemable? And those are the moments that people will come up and say,
Right.
It was just so great today. It was so meaningful. And I'm sure you guys have had this, and this is not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about what I'm bringing. It's what God is doing. And when I'm faithful and available to just do it because He's worthy of it, like the fruit comes out. And it's not because of us, it's because of Him. And so, the encouragement is just, you don't want to be there, do it anyway. You don't want to sing, he's worthy of it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Because it will move you forward in your spirituality.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, let's do one more question, and then we'll be done. Why do you write and record your own worship music? I'll start this one off. We've done a little bit of writing and recording of our own songs, and it's for a couple of different reasons. One is the fact that we have really talented songwriters at this church, like creative people, and it's something we enjoy doing. And there's an aspect of like we believe that God has gifted people with creativity, and and when He's gifted us with creativity, it's up to us to steward that and use that. And so there's a piece of that. We don't do a lot of it. We don't, and we definitely don't write and record music to try to make a name for ourselves or anything like that. It literally is just like we believe that God has gifted us to be creative, and part of that is like we've had a songwriting group that's been going for the past year that has met and just wrote songs, like a dozen people from our church that has just been writing songs.
So cool.
Even just like in this season of our church. Like we have, like next week we're, a couple of us are going to do worship for our young adults, and we're playing a couple of songs, a couple of new like original songs that were written by people who aren't even on staff at this church. And I think that's really cool. So that's a big part of why we do it. And even just because it's nice for people. We want people to be able to have something to say, hey, my church made this. It's really cool. I'd love for you to come check out my church and find out who Jesus is. So there's an aspect of that as well. But you guys have any thoughts on that? On doing our own music?
I think you had, and I wasn't in the songwriting group, but you guys met like a month ago, or maybe a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And the assignment, I just thought the assignment that you gave was so significant. And it was like, write a song that you think carries the message that our church needs to hear in this season. And I think there's something so special about being a part of the community and having like a pulse on just what are people in your community group, like what's the theme, because there will be a commonality within like the themes that people are feeling in some seasons. And so I thought that was a really like beautiful task that you prompted them with. And then hearing both of you say like, and within that, some of those songs were like, all of them were so meaningful and spoke really, really great truth just over our church body. And they're not even ones we're going to necessarily sing, but it's just this beautiful idea of people who are here on a weekly basis, who are involved with our church, who are like, I think this is a prayer, I think this is a psalm, I think this is a verse that our church needs to hear, and here's it put into this song format. I just think there's something really special about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fun. Even like we put out an EP like last year, and I think even like I have younger kids, and it's very funny to me sometimes. Like my daughter Scarlett, who is 9, and her friend Elsie, whenever they are hanging out, they absolutely love Becca's song on the EP. And I'm not joking. They blast that song and sing to it at the top of their lungs. And I'm always like, I'm on this EP too, right? And they're like, whatever, Dad.
They're like, go away, Dad.
Whatever, Dad. It's only Becca's song. It's the only song on here.
Gosh.
And they but there's an aspect of that where that's
very
like
sweet.
Like I love that.
Yeah.
I love that they're choosing to play that and like and all the time. I'm not joking.
That's very sweet. You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Do they want a signed copy?
Oh my God.
I'm just joking. They're both
no,
so
but
cute.
I do think like it's just a fun thing to like
and
be
it
like
comes
this is
from our church, and it's people that people who played on that album or people that they're seeing
people they know
all the
and, like,
time.
yeah.
It's a very special thing for our church body. I would hope.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Well,
Yeah. Okay. That's all the questions we have. Any final thoughts from any of you guys?
I love my job, and I love being able to serve this church, and so it's just a huge blessing in my life to be able to lead this church, this group of people, in corporate worship. So,
wow. Yeah.
so I just want to say thank you to those
Yeah. Thank
those
you.
that are tuning in.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing us to lead you in worship, and for participating in it, and for being gracious to us as we, do our best. So, yeah, very grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really is a privilege to get to lead worship with this church. And all of us have been at this church for a long time. Now, part of that is like we do truly believe that this is a great place, and we love being able to worship together. Yep. And so we very much appreciate all of your willingness to jump in and worship, and it's just created a lot of great moments. And so we're grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a worship night coming up.
We do.
In November. So it's kind of exciting because what is the date on that? You guys remember?
The 26th, right?
Okay, November 26th.
Yeah.
Sunday, November 26th. We're going to do a worship night. We've done a few of these now. This is the first one that we're going to do 2 of them, because if you have come to the worship nights, you would know that they are extremely full.
Yeah,
and maybe you've had to sit in the lobby.
Or on the floor.
And so
Oh, man.
we're telling you right now, there is going to be extra room at this worship night. So we want all of you to come out. There will be a spot for you.
Yeah.
And we're excited to be able to worship together. And I wanted to say to you guys too, Chad and Becca made a video for this Hope on the Horizon song that Chad was talking about, and it's really great. And if you want to go watch it online, man, I just thought it was really fun to be able to have that and hear that. So
Thank you.
good job.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
We do want to answer your guys' questions,
Yeah.
not just for this format. So if you have a question for us, come talk to us.
Yeah.
Please.
Send us an email. You can find us. We're around.
Yep.
And we'd love to chat about these things. So,
Yeah.
Paul, anything that we need to share about next week's podcast?
I don't think so. It's going to be fun.
Okay. We will not be here, so it will be fun.
So much more fun.
In a different way.
You did
different
way.
kinds
Yes.
of fun.
Okay. I think that's all we have for today.
All right.
All right. See you later.